The Week in Space. CBS News selective coverage of the mission of Gemini 9. Now the docking in space of Gemini 9 and its target vehicle. Reporting from the CBS News Space Center at the McDonnell Aircraft Plant in St. Louis, correspondent Walter Cronkite.
Everything is going very well with Gemini 9. Stafford and Cernan have chased that target vehicle 70,000 miles, 3 times around the Earth at their orbital speed of 17,500 miles an hour. They have adjusted their orbit upward from the orbit into which they were launched, 100 miles by 168 miles at its peak, to the 185-mile circular orbit of the unmanned target vehicle, and they are now within a mile of the target vehicle as they hurtle over the Pacific Ocean on their third revolution. They are out of touch, however, with ground stations. The last station was at Carnarvon, Australia, on the western coast of Australia, and at that point they reported they were within a mile of the target vehicle. They are supposed to stay out at about that distance, keeping a station, a close eye on the target, perhaps moving into within 100 feet or so of the target vehicle as they approach Hawaii, where they will next be picked up in communication with the ground in about another 10 to 15 minutes. At that time, we expect to know definitely whether or not the target vehicle did drop as it was supposed to upon launch Wednesday, the shroud which covers the target, the adapter, the cone, the point at which the two spacecraft will actually join together. If that shroud has been dropped, then this mission goes ahead as planned. If it has not been dropped, then other plans will be made for the mission. At any rate, so far it's going well. They have had trouble with their onboard computer, but at Houston, the Manned Space Center, they say that this should not hinder the rest of the operation and they can go ahead as they are. Hawaii is supposed to acquire the spacecraft at approximately, 2 more minutes from now. But they're giving it a little more time and saying it might be as much as 10 minutes before they're able to get information from the spacecraft, and that information, the first they'll want to know is whether or not the shroud is on the target vehicle. We have some feeling here at the McDonnell plant at St. Louis, where our Space Center has moved from Cape Kennedy. We flew up from Cape Kennedy right after the launch and are here now with Dave Shoemaker and Bob Sharp of McDonnell, who have been holding down the fort here at St. Louis so splendidly. And back there in the spacecraft behind me, perhaps they can tell us what the indications are, Dave and Bob, that we have that shroud may have been dropped.
Well, Walter, I plan to collect several cups of coffee over Bob's assurances here that that shroud was going to be off, and the best indication now seems to be 2 blinking lights, those lights that Cernan said exultantly, "I've got them." Bob, what does that mean, those lights?
Well, those lights are normally under the shroud. They are on a spring mechanism that retracts back and behind the docking cone. So the shroud has to leave, and then the docking cone has to extend before these lights can be released and they fly out. So if they've seen the lights, that means they're out, and the docking cone is, or the shroud is, should not be there.
Well, so far we have had no confirmation of that, either from the astronauts or from Mission Control down at Houston. I suppose we could just say that until the astronauts formally see the spacecraft target vehicle and call it in, we just will have to say it looks good, but no one knows for sure.
That's the only way we'll know for certain. I'll win that coffee.
All right, gentlemen, as you fly along in our simulator here at St. Louis, and as we saw just a moment ago, the view that the astronauts will be getting from the spacecraft of the target vehicle if that shroud is off. We are waiting for word from the spacecraft itself somewhere over the Pacific as soon as it gets in touch with Hawaii as to whether that shroud is on or off. CBS News color coverage, the Gemini 9. A mission will continue in a moment.
Great race, Tommy.
If only you'd move that fast when I ask you to brush your teeth.
Oh, Mom, the taste of that toothpaste would slow anybody up.
You know it's meant to reduce cavities.
Sure, but I still get some.
Mrs. Wallace, how about Colgate? It not only tastes good, but test after test proves it really fights cavities. Why, in one test, dental scientists compared Colgate's Gardol formula with the best-known fluoride. Their report, published in the Journal of the American Society of Dentistry for Children, confirmed Colgate unsurpassed in reducing new cavities.
Why, that means no toothpaste was found better for Tommy than Colgate.
Right.
And Colgate helps stop bad breath. Well, Tommy, it looks like we're a one-toothpaste family again.
Colgate, the largest selling anti-cavity toothpaste in the world.
Back here at our CBS News Space Center, now established at McDonald Plant in St. Louis, from which we expect to cover the rendezvous, possibly the docking of the Gemini 9 with its unmanned target vehicle, and late tomorrow morning, the walk of Eugene Cernan in space. 2.5-hour walk he is expected to make. We're still waiting from word from Hawaii that they have acquired the spacecraft as it comes over Hawaii, across the Pacific, and hope to get word then that the shroud has been dropped. Let's go to Al Chop, the voice of Mission Control.
Okay, it's 3 or 4 degrees per second. Right, Hawaii. Stand by, Hawaii. Right. Hawaii, Capcom, Houston flight. Go flight. Roger. Will you ask the crew if they think cycling the target docking adapter? 58% fuel remaining. We're station keeping out here between 10 and 30 feet north. Roger, copy. Roger, Gary. Try back again. Ask the crew if they think cycling the target docking adapter from unrigidized to rigidized might help break it loose. Roger, copy, flight. Say again, 79. Roger, it appears that the basic rate is enrolled. Roger, it appears that the basic rate is enrolled. The body axis right now is nearly horizontal. Very slight bit of and the big rates are in roll. Roger, understand. Do you think there's any possibility of breaking the cone or shaking it loose by? Roger, why don't you have the crew stand by there, and why don't you try cycling the target docking adapter cone back to the rigidized and then back to the unrigidized, and in between each cycle, actually as you cycle it back to rigidized, have the crew watch it and see if it seems to be doing any good. Roger. And advise them when you're sending the command. Roger. Gemini 9 Hawaii. Hawaii, Gemini 9, I can also see the back two springs. The back two small springs, little 30-pound springs. Way up in about 5-10 feet on the jockey in position here. And the back bolt is definitely fired. I can see the spring has got the two shells apart about 2 inches. The two halves are 2 inches. You can see that there's quad 4 here that and it's the pyros, it's the cables on the pyros, that front clamshell driving speed. Strap has fired, you can see the black smudge marks on it. I'm now about 3 feet from it. And those electrical connectors that quick disconnect did not connect on either one of them. They did not disconnect, is that right? Two small, and the band is holding the whole mass together. Now stand by one, let me give you a distance on this other one. And in fact, I'm trying to find the cable disconnect. I can't see the cable disconnect. Of course, it would be taut. Okay, the other one, the spring is gone from the back to the other half one, and no piping is still there. It's separated, so both the back is completely separated 3 to 4 inches. And I'll give you another good check. The only thing that's holding the whole mass on there is the band. Everybody's pyro disconnects will work. Roger, understand. We've got about 3 minutes here to our LOS. We'd like to go through one rigidized and unrigidized sequence and you watch it if you get into a position where you could watch it from. Okay, stand by one. I don't want to be too close to the things cut loose. Roger, understand. Okay, now on the other side. Both explosive bolts on the band have fired, and the band is held intact by all 4 of those electrical pyros fired the bolts. It doesn't look like somebody hooked up a disconnect cable.
Roger, understand.
Disconnects did not disconnect, and that's the only thing that's holding the whole mass intact.
Roger.
Delaware and Richard Eyes here. Can we hack it over the States?
Roger, I was just going to suggest I'm getting too close to LOS.
Yeah, I'm too close to the nose cone, too.
Roger.
Okay, Gary, you can advise. Well, stand by. We'll pick it up.
Relay that word on to Houston. All 4 explosive bolts have fired. It is basically free from the APDA, but just barely held on by those 4 little pyro wires there.
Roger.
Pyro wires on the strap are disconnected.
Roger, understand.
And we have 58% ohms fuel remaining.
Roger.
It looks like an angry alligator out here rotating around.
I can imagine.
Hawaii, Capcom, Houston flight.
Go flight.
Roger. Ask the crew if they could be set up for the standby.
Where the Houston Recon Station kept here quite a while, and also we had a suggestion that we might put out our docking bar and go up and tap it.
Roger. Stand by.
All right.
Say again, flight.
I've got a counter proposal. Ask them, tell them we're going to continue working on their description, and we'll cycle the adapter, and we'll pick them up over the States here.
Okay, very good. Okay, we're having LOS.
That was voice communication between the Hawaiian tracking station and Gemini 9, and you heard Tom Stafford give a very vivid description of the status of the shroud that is still hanging to our target vehicle. Our next communication, of course, will come when we get over the stateside pass in a few minutes, and we will attempt to bring further information at that time, hopefully a plan whereby we can release the shroud. This is Gemini Control at 4 hours, 34 minutes into the flight.
That was a communication with Hawaii. They'll have about half hour almost, a little bit less than that, to discuss this matter with the various tracking stations right on across the states when the communications should be a great deal better, and make a decision at that time as to just what they can do about that hanging shroud. As you heard, the explosive bolts blew, but the shroud apparently hung up on the small pyrotechnic wires. That is, the wires that carry the electric charge to the pyrotechnics, the explosives that burst loose these bolts which hold the shroud on. Those wires did not disconnect as they were supposed to, and Tom Stafford believes they're the only things that are holding the shroud on. He says he's got an angry alligator up there. The glob has turned into an angry alligator with these big jaws of the shroud at a 25 to 30 degree angle. What they're going to exactly do about this remains to be seen. You heard Tom Stafford's suggestion that they extend their docking bar and go up and try to tap it loose. That came, however, immediately after he had said he didn't want to get too close in case pieces flew off of that thing. So there's a certain contradiction in his own recommendation, apparently. But down at Master Control, Mission Control in Houston, they have some other ideas, and maybe Nelson Benton, who was standing by in Houston, can tell us what they are. Nelson?
Walter, we can only speculate, I suppose, right now about what they will do, but as you recall, yesterday, mission officials told us that if they found the shroud in this partially opened position, that would be, from the astronaut's standpoint and from the standpoint of the spacecraft, the most dangerous position that shroud could be in, because they would rather have found it closed from an actual danger to the spacecraft standpoint. The earlier word that we had was that if the shroud is on, mostly they'll just take pictures of it. However, I presume there's great deliberation going on in Mission Control now as to just what can be done to change that angry alligator back to just a nice shroudless glob. Walter?
One thing should be pointed out, that while they are hurtling through space at 17,500 miles an hour, if that shroud comes loose, it doesn't come flying back like the hood of your automobile would if you were driving along a highway and it came loose and were buffeted by a 60-mile-an-hour wind. That shroud would float right along with the rest of them at that 17,500 miles an hour. What did concern the space experts before they got this report, and may still concern them, is that besides the explosive bolts, this shroud is spring-loaded, and the springs push besides the explosive bolts blowing away the band which holds it together, these springs push the two pieces of the shroud out at about a 3-mile-an-hour speed. Not enough, they believe, to do any damage to the spacecraft itself, but they wouldn't want a walking astronaut to get mixed up in that. Well, that might mean that they could go ahead and practice their various rendezvous and docking maneuvers with this craft in this configuration with the shroud on, and then when they got ready for the spacewalk, they just back off away and let Cernan do that in the safety away from the target. Dave Shoemaker has a model back here showing us how those clamshells open. And Dave, maybe you could give us a little explanation of that right now.
Walter, this, I guess, is an angry alligator. It's pretty hard to tell from the description exactly the position that the shroud is in, but it's probably something like this. Bob, what seems to be holding it together now? How would you describe the situation?
I couldn't understand all the conversation, but there's a ring, a clamp ring that goes around this portion of the shroud, and evidently that hadn't gone all the way, was the impression I got, so that the clamshells couldn't spring away. And normally there's a bow in each one of these clamshells, so when they're squeezed together and the ring holds them, this will keep them together. And then when they blow the ring and it's pulled up and released, the ring, I believe, comes off, and the natural bow then and these two clamshells tend to push them apart.
Well, apparently, this shroud has come partway off. That would explain why they saw the acquisition lights, and they've also described that there was some separation in here. Also, they talk about at least two possible remedies. One that we heard Tom Stafford mention was just coming up and bumping it. What would be the danger of doing that?
I don't know. I can't really think of any danger.
David, let me butt in here because the astronauts were getting some conversation from them.
All right.
Delta V 20, 35-second burn time. 25 all zeros, 26 is 9er 0200, 27 is 0, and forward thrusters up.
Roger. It sounds to us like that perhaps the cables haven't pulled the disconnects to the wire bundles, in which case we would definitely have to wait until with the contingency plan B there on waiting until later to look at that. We will go ahead and exercise that TDA as soon as we get acquisition at the Cape. Your platform alignment prior to this SEP will be about 5 minutes from now, so you got that much time to do what you like.
Okay, Neil. From here, it looks like it's very possible that those wire bundles could have separated. It's real hard to see, but again, there's everybody squared away on what's holding the thing together.
Well, I think everybody down here is pretty well convinced by your description of the situation.
Yeah, okay, I can't really tell whether we have two big umbilicals that goes to the ATDA. I can't tell whether those are still attached or not, but it's the four little wires that go into each of the explosive bolts on the strap that's supposed to have a disconnect on it. And those are all intact, and all four explosive bolts are fired. So it's just the little disconnect umbilicals on the strap that have not pulled. All four of them are still intact, and all four should have pulled.
Roger, we're with you, Tom.
Texas Remote, California Local. Cal Local.
We'll probably get some more of that conversation shortly. That's the Guaymas station, Lower California, that was relaying that communication through Mission Control in Houston, and it's being played back from Mission Control to us on a 15-second delay basis. That is, you actually hear it 15 seconds after they hear it in Houston. So, Bob, I think that, Bob Sharp, that communication clarified the situation considerably. It is the wires to the pyrotechnic charges in the strap that you were talking about there a moment ago. Bob, there's one other thing occurs to me here. I wonder, maybe you and Dave address yourselves too. With that clamshell partially opened in that fashion, that shroud, is there any possibility that it could buffet the docking adapter itself and cause any difficulty? I mean, it could cause any damage to the docking ring?
No, I wouldn't really think so. If it's parted there, probably most of the spring force has gone out of that you get from bowing the shroud together there. I don't see how it could damage the adapter. That's a pretty tough hunk of stuff. It's made to take a whole spacecraft impacting at some oddball angles at around 1.5 feet per second.
Bob, they suggest that they might exercise, they call it, the ATDA. What does that mean? That they'll rigidize and unrigidize the docking cone, or what?
Yes, when it gets over the Cape, then they'll have the capability of sending a command to rigidize the docking cone. That means the docking cone right here will retract back into the ATDA, and then they'll unrigidize it again and cycle it out. And this could, if it's hanging up on the cone or rubbing it a little bit, give it enough of a jar to kick it loose.
So, Walter, it looks like they've got some really real-time decisions to make up there right now.
Yes, and we see now the wisdom of these rather complicated flight plans of theirs, which in this case take them, first of all, over Hawaii before the docking, and then across the United States. This gives them the opportunity, which they now have, for some clear communications, discussion between the astronauts and the ground station and the experts there at Mission Control. Here's more of the conversation from the astronauts.
Okay, and then how long will it take you to get in position for platform align as soon as this is over?
Oh, not too long.
Okay, we're going to be running out of alignment time here. Your pitch will probably be in about 5 minutes or so, so we'll have probably a little shorter alignment time. Will be okay.
Okay, I'm getting in position now.
Gotcha.
There's one thing about this information from the astronauts is that apparently the spacecraft, the target is not tumbling, it's rolling.
Neil, have you got any ready for my suggestion about extending the docking bar and giving us a tap?
Well, we're pretty convinced due to telemetry signals from the cables that they're still plugged in.
Okay, well, Jesus, it's barely, I mean, it looks like it's barely, that's right, the big cables may still be there, but once that strap goes, the whole thing should deploy.
Right. Are you ready to watch for, we're ready to send the commands now.
Okay, stand by.
Let us know as soon as you're ready.
Okay.
This is the command. This is the command to exercise the target vehicle. That maneuver that Bob Sharp was explaining a moment ago.
Neil, send the command.
Roger. Okay, rigidizing now.
It's moving. It's moving all around. You rigidized the clamshell. The alligator jaws came close slightly.
Roger.
Acquisition grantor.
Okay, unrigidize.
Hey, the whole mass rotates about 15 degrees on it.
Okay, that's pretty good signal then. We'll go ahead, plan on going ahead with a separation burn at this point.
Okay, Neil. Upper position, start alignment.
If they're going ahead with the separation burn at this time, as they call it, meaning that they're going to separate the two spacecraft.
Okay, you've got about 14 minutes left till separation burn, so guide your platform line and positioning accordingly.
Roger.
This means they have gone to the alternate plan and apparently do not intend to attempt docking. They apparently have accepted this, what they would probably call in the space program, an anomaly. This problem with the target and its nose cone, and will go to a secondary plan which will provide for the 3 rendezvous that they were planning for this mission, but without the docking, perhaps hoping that something will happen to this shroud in the course of the next couple of days, that they can still get their docking practice in. Chris Kraft at Houston has said that he does not consider docking a priority item in this mission at any rate, since the Armstrong-Scott successful docking went so well in Gemini 8 before they had trouble with their thrusters and had to come down early. They have decided that they can practice on ground trainers the docking procedure almost as well as they can do it up there in space. We have seen a little space drama this afternoon as they checked on that shroud situation. And now they're apparently going to the plan simply to come to do the rendezvous without the docking. And that's the status of the Gemini 9 mission at this moment. We're at our CBS News Space Center here at the McDonnell Aircraft Plant in St. Louis, on the 3rd revolution, with the spacecraft now coming across the United States and about to pass over the Cape on out toward the Atlantic on its 4th revolution. We now have established that the shroud of the target did not jettison as it was supposed to have when the unmanned target vehicle was rocketed into orbit on Wednesday morning. It is hanging by the wires which connected the explosive bolts to the battery supply in the target itself. Those wires are still connected and are holding the shroud open like a pair of alligator jaws at some 25 to 30 degree angle. They make it impossible to dock with the target adapter. The spacecraft, Tom Stafford, still has suggested he'd like to go up and give the shroud a little nudge with the spacecraft to see if he can break it loose, but Houston has not given him permission to do that. Houston did try rigidizing and unrigidizing, pulling in the docking collar and pushing it out again on the target adapter, and it did move the shroud but did not break it loose. And the last word we heard from Mission Control in Houston to the astronauts indicated that they are dropping for the time being the plans to dock. They're planning now the separation maneuver, which will get them in position for the 2nd rendezvous attempt, and a rendezvous without the use of radar, but only with the use of onboard computers and second. The trouble now is that the onboard computer has been malfunctioning this morning as well, and how they'll go through with this 2nd rendezvous we haven't been told as yet. Let's listen to the astronauts. I gather there was a communication. We'll listen because they're coming in and out occasionally as Houston talks to them. You can see by our map there in the upper corner the position of the spacecraft as it nears the beginning of its 4th
4 hours, 51 minutes into the mission. You heard the description from Tom Stafford of the status of the target vehicle. At this time, spacecraft and target are passing over the Antigua tracking station area, the northern part of South America. They are beginning the 4th revolution for the spacecraft. Tom Stafford has aligned his platform, moving into position for the equal period re-rendezvous, the burn for which will start at 5:01 elapsed time. 5 hours 01 elapsed time. The burn will be a delta V of 20 feet per second, delta time of 35 seconds. He will pitch down 90 degrees with the blunt end up and fire his forward thrusters. This will place him approximately 2.5 miles above the target, and they will reach a maximum separation from the target of approximately 11 miles. They will be behind the target approximately 11 miles and will come up again and re-rendezvous with the target. During this, after the burn is completed, there will be necessary a slight mid-course correction, which will be figured out by the crew aboard Gemini 9. This is Gemini Control at 4 hours 53 minutes into the mission.
This is what is called a radial translation maneuver. It's 20 foot per second, or some 13 mile an hour upward burn of the rockets, giving the spacecraft a new orbit of 179 miles to 191 miles, some few miles above the orbit of the target vehicle. This equiperiod orbit of which they're speaking means that although the perigee and the apogee of the two spacecraft do not coincide, they do come back to the same point in space as they come around. Maybe we can get a demonstration of that a little later on from perhaps IBM, one of our graphic people, as to how this apogee and perigee situation works with an equiperiod orbit. But that is the basic principle of it. The apogee and the perigee, the high point and the low point of the circle of the Earth, are not the same, but they're in the same plane, and they do come around to the same point again after a complete revolution of the Earth. That is the intention of this maneuver. When they come around on the next time after this separation and come back in range, then at that point the spacecraft is going to attempt to make rendezvous by simply the use of the onboard computer, if it is working at that point, or information sent from the ground as to the location of the two spacecraft, and a sextant. Jack Siegel is at the IBM console in New York and can demonstrate that equiperiod rendezvous for us. Jack?
Walter, maybe this computer demonstration, computer graphics, will give an idea of what we're talking about. Here we've greatly distorted the orbit around the Earth to get our point across easier. The Gemini and the target vehicle. Now let's show what the Gemini is doing first. When they talk of a radial burn, they are pitching down 90 degrees to point directly at the center of the Earth. If you ran a radius from the center of the Earth out, the Gemini is pointing right down. Then they are thrusting away from the Earth. So really, Walter, they're not adding thrust either forward or aft in their flight. What they're doing is adding thrust to change the shape of their orbit. Now, this is greatly exaggerated. I believe the actual figure, Walter, is 13 miles, the furthest distance that they will be apart, but during the revolution around the Earth. But in this, you'll see they've changed. However, they will still go around the Earth in the same rough amount of time. Now, the question that is asked normally is, well, why are they doing this? This is being done so that because they would come back to the same point as originally, that, let's stop this for a moment, when they get to about 80 degrees further of travel to go, 80 degrees radial travel, they'll then use their sextant and just use the onboard computer possibly for computation to try to rendezvous earlier. That's what they'll be doing in this particular case with the equiperiod rendezvous. Have I covered that for you?
I think you did it very well, Jack. Thank you very much. Those graphics of yours certainly make this orbital physics, which is not an easy subject, a great deal more understandable to us laymen. That rendezvous will take place then in about an hour and a half from the separation burn, that radio translation, as they call it. Translation's the word they use for motion out of plane or in plane, but motion in a specific direction out of that in which they're moving. That burn of the rockets is supposed to come now in about 3 minutes, and then the rendezvous would come in an hour and a half after that. Now, under this new plan that they have designed in Houston for this contingency, which now has developed, that the shroud is still hanging on the target, and that rendezvous, the docking, therefore, is impossible. And we see a simulation here of the situation which pertains out there now with this real alligator, as Tom Stafford calls it up there. They will do their 3 rendezvous maneuvers. They have done the original rendezvous on the 3rd orbit. It was a perfect rendezvous. Their launch was exactly on time, as it had to be to make it a perfect rendezvous. They conducted all of their changes in orbit exactly as planned, and they met the target vehicle exactly as planned, only to be disappointed to find that that shroud is still there. Now, they'll do this other rendezvous, which will come in about an hour and a half, and then they'll do a 3rd rendezvous very early tomorrow morning, just before Eugene Cernan's 2.5-hour spacewalk. And now let's listen to Al Chop, the voice of Mission Control.
At 4 hours and 58 minutes into the mission, Gemini 9 is beginning its 4th revolution, our target on its 34th revolution. Both vehicles are passing over the northern part of South America at this time. We have a report that the pressure and temperature readings obtained from the AMU, Astronaut Maneuvering Unit, during the boost phase and while it is in orbit indicate that conditions of the hydrogen peroxide fuel very closely approximate those that pertained on the pad prior to launch. Current readings are pressure 90 pounds psi and temperature 77 degrees. Captain John Donahue, Air Force project officer for the AMU experiment, remarked that the unit appears to be in excellent condition. This is Gemini Control at 4 hours, 59 minutes into the flight.
News selective coverage of the mission of Gemini 9. Now the start of astronaut Gene Cernan's 2.5-hour walk in space. Reporting from the CBS News Space Center at the McDonnell Aircraft Plant in St. Louis, correspondent Walter Cronkite.
Good morning, and everything is going well for Eugene Cernan's walk in space. The longest man has yet attempted, only the 3rd time a man has stepped out of a spacecraft into the void of space and floated independent of the machine that took him there. Eugene Cernan is scheduled to step out of that Gemini 9 spacecraft out over Hawaii in about 5 minutes from now. It has been a very restful night for the 2 astronauts. You remember it was the fact that they were fatigued after their very difficult rendezvous operation yesterday that postponed this walk for 24 hours. Well, they napped yesterday afternoon, deep slumber for 2 hours. Then they had 10 hours of a sleep period last night, during which they slept soundly for about 4 hours each and dozed another 6 hours. But they awoke very chipper this morning, a chipper hello down there when they awakened, and ever since then their voices have shown some of the excitement, perhaps restrained but excited, of this forthcoming space walk. This 32-year-old Navy lieutenant commander is all ready to go. The cabin has been depressurized as far as we know here now. That process began almost 25 minutes ago, and it means that now the prime astronaut, the commander of the spacecraft, Tom Stafford, and Eugene Cernan are depending on the pressure of their spacesuits to sustain them in space. The hatch will be opened in another 3.5 minutes, and Cernan will emerge from that hatch. He will not step out of the spacecraft for another several minutes after that. He will stand in the seat of the spacecraft and take in a micrometeorite collection box that is on the spacecraft or mounted right behind him. That box collecting and finding out about the various matter that is floating around in space. He will then adjust a camera and eventually step out of the spacecraft. CBS News color coverage of the Gemini 9 mission will continue in a moment.
What
Well, what do you know? Don Juan's back in town. Who's the lucky girl tonight? What's that, lover boy?
Trade secret, sis. Kills germs.
Oh, come on, get with it.
Well, it kills germs, doesn't it?
But does it give you long-lasting protection?
Well, after a while, I do worry about my breath.
Never fear. 100's here.
What's 100?
Colgate 100. It's a new oral antiseptic. I always use 100 to feel confident, day or night. I just do what it says in the label. 100 gives hours of power.
Hey, I can feel it go to work.
You're right. When 100 was tested directly against the best-known mouthwash, 100 proved better protection against germs for hours. Hours.
Never fear.
100's here.
Always use 100 to feel confident, day or night. New Colgate 100.
Let's listen to a recording from the Pacific being played back from Houston. This is a very difficult translation to understand. They are reporting preparations to open the hatch.
Are you caught on something? That's right, I'm all right now. Man, a kid. Hallelujah. Boy, is that beautiful out there, Tom. I grab my Hasselblad, I take a picture of that. Okay. I can't turn around fast enough. Okay. Okay. Let me see how these hatch forces are. Okay. Now, trying to grab a hold of it, they'll be all right, I guess. On the back of the boat. Now, I'm not going to try and install it. The handrail in the back is out. No bad, but I may be able to get this one. Oh, I got that one. She's out. Good pressure. Can't see it. It's too dark out. Okay, my visor's down now, Tom. Okay.
The times you see being supered there on your screen are times to the opening of the hatch.
I checked the game limit. Okay, I'll check again, but I already put them there, Tom. Stand by, wait a minute, let me check these. There go. Now, I want to float out. It's a little bit dark yet, Tom. Let me see. I'll just float up. I got a hold at about 3.9 right now. Okay, I'm up. And I'm in medium flow and very comfortable. Real good. Up. Make sure you got. Okay, I'm turning around and trying to get S12 now, Tom. Okay.
S12 is the recovery of the micrometeorite box. That's the little box right behind Cernan's head as he stands in the hatch, which he's doing now. He's standing in the hatch. He's turning around and trying to...
That way. Yeah, okay. If I get in the instrument panel, I keep them coming out.
This is our simulation here in McDonald. What's going on right now?
There we go. Pretty nominal right now. 3 points.
This is a small box, which is to measure the impact of the micrometeorites. Little specks, hardly larger than pebbles of sand, smaller than pebbles of sand. scientists interested in just how hard they do impact a body. And this box has been...
Okay, the S-12 lanyard's on. Here comes S-12, Tom. Okay. Oh, I still got it. I got it. Okay, I'm leaving go.
What you're hearing is a conversation between Cernan and Stafford. He's handing down this micrometeorite box.
Yeah, join the cloud. Yeah. Play the handrail. Handrail is deployed. Okay, come on there, you cutters.
Deployment of the handrail, a handrail which comes out, extends from the spacecraft that he can hold on to as he maneuvers around the spacecraft.
Okay.
This is from Mission Control Houston of Cernan's heartbeat, the determining factor as to how much of this workload he can carry in space.
It's a long way back to that handrail. Yep.
It says a long way to that handrail. Now he's attaching the camera, which will face forward, as you see there. That head you see in the screen there is that of flight surgeon Chuck Berry, Charles Berry.
Yep, you better hold me, Colonel. Please.
The man you see in that spacesuit is Miles McClure, ground engineer.
There to get at these things to the handrail so far back. I think... Pull me back down. I'll pull you down. Okay. Pull me down some more. Okay. Okay.
That broken transmission sounds as if Cernan has stepped out of the spacecraft.
Hey, Tom, put me back more. I don't see anything waving off the adapters from here.
Telling Stafford to hold me down, which I assume would be holding the umbilical down and keeping me from floating free.
Okay, let me try these double. Okay. Hold the camera, now let me check the settings again, Tom. 6 frames per second, 200. And F16, huh? Strange world out here, you know? Yeah.
You're listening to the conversation between Cernan, floating in space now outside of his capsule. That's nearly as we can get to my indication, and with our simulation here, of course, is talking back to Stafford, and that radio command link. Actually,
I had it in, but it wouldn't snap down. Okay.
Actually, it's a link along that tether line you see there, 25 feet of umbilical cord. That contains the life support system and communications link from the spacecraft life support system out through that chest pack.
Down, Tom. Down. Put me down. Okay. Okay, hold on a second.
Well, we haven't been able to clearly determine it from the rather garbled conversation we're hearing, we're listening in on between Cernan and Stafford. At this point, he should be attaching that tether out there so he won't float too far free and it won't tangle.
That's it, but it's in. Okay, Tom, let me turn around before I... Pull that leg down.
hearing that?
Gene Cernan going about his duties in a very businesslike way, it sounded to us here on the ground. The communication a little choppy to start with. They improved as we moved through the center of the Hawaii Circle. And we lost acquisition about a minute ago. We should pick them up again in about 2 minutes via California. At 49 hours and 26 minutes elapsed time, Gene did retrieve the S-12 micrometeorite impact emulsion dish. He also deployed the handrails about 2 minutes later. And he noted it was quite a distance back to the handrail. He seemed to have a little trouble setting up his EVA 16mm camera. And now we have reacquired via California. Let's go back to the spacecraft.
Okay, let me take a preview here, son.
We should have steady transmission and good transmission.
The ELSS wants to ride up in my face. Everything I think goes up.
Houston standing by.
Okay.
We should have pretty good transmission now for the next 20 minutes until they lose the signal again over Antigua. The pass over Southern California and down around the Texas border in Mexico, out over the Gulf, but in communication with the Texas stations, then in the Kennedy station, Bermuda, and Antigua before we finally lose this signal again on the spacewalk.
Hey, Dick, if you're listening, and I know you are, boy, you got a beauty coming.
We're reading you loud and fairly clear, Tom. Roger, you're clipping a little bit, Tom, but we're getting most of it. Very good.
Cernan at this point should be attaching that mirror.
Okay.
That mirror so that Stafford can see Cernan when he goes to the back of the spacecraft.
Yeah, that's right, Tom.
You're hearing mission control in Houston speaking directly.
Feels real good in the ELSS. Temperatures are good, heat pressures are holding real good.
Houston, roger.
Mission control talking to Command Pilot Tom Stafford, who says that Cernan's chest pack's working well. That's a 25-foot umbilical cord on which he is maneuvering. He is not.
We're coming right over LA, I think. I can see Edwards, and I can see the island.
He's not actually maneuvering now. He's floating free. He'll maneuver later on in the spacewalk with a backpack.
Keep the bag exposed to you, Jim.
I suppose you heard Cernan say you can see Edwards Air Force Base below him, see the islands off the coast of California. His first comment when he stepped out there was, it's wild out here.
California. Yeah. Okay, can you pull that in anymore? Okay. Go ahead, put it on, please. Do what? Just, we got some here. Throw it out, give it to me. Got a good half hour right here. Okay.
chest pack he's wearing. Weighs some 42 pounds. It can circulate. Cools the air.
Yeah, you're all here. Okay. Down the nose. Okay, wait a minute. Take it a little bit slower here, Johnny Frank. Yeah, mine's holding good. All comfortable. Okay, you better give me the doctor bar, man.
He's not maneuvering now, just floating free.
California local. Texas remote. California local. Yeah, get there. I'm down a little bit. Okay, here we go now.
This is Dr. Barry closely watching those heart rates.
Here we go now. Oh, fuck you. Hey.
Cernan is doing out there is testing the dynamics of this free float in space. Just what happens when he throws one arm out, for instance. Does he flip over from just the exertion and the reaction to that? And the dynamics of the umbilical tether, what that does when he pull on the tether like that, does the spaceship itself move, or does he pull him back toward the spaceship? How much attitude control of the spacecraft is necessary? Spacecraft is just about now south of Cape Kennedy.
Real good.
just about south of Florida now. Cernan now holds the record for the walk in space. He has exceeded that of Ed White, who walked just 1 year and 2 days ago for 20 minutes. At this point, Cernan comes back to the hatch. He will step down in the hatch to readjust cameras. And then he will emerge from the hatch about 5 minutes after that. He goes into the hatch. He's scheduled to go in there in about 14 minutes from now. See clearly here the handrail.
I can for a little bit. I want to evaluate these hand pads if I can. Okay, now I'm stuck on this thing with a hand pad right now, but they won't stay. GoPro's not strong enough here. GoPro won't hack it, huh? No, not bad, Mona. Look at that nose is not off lately.
Near as we can tell through that garbled transmission, he's trying these Velcro patches, which you see our suit engineer here at McDonnell, Miles McClure, testing there too. These are patches placed on the spacecraft to conform.
The only control I have is the umbilical, and of course the shorter it is, the better control I've got.
Velcro is this material of little nylon loops on one piece of material and little nylon hooks on the other, thousands of them, that hook together. Women are familiar with them, and dress fastenings, that sort of thing. In space, in the weightlessness of space, this Velcro material has turned out to be very useful. They can...
I'm trying to go out here now if I can. Away from you. Head out in here.
They can support the full weight of a man.
Okay, I'm at the end of the umbilical.
At least that is so hoped, and that's what they're testing. He's got Velcro pads on the palms of his hand. and Velcro pads on the spacecraft to help him maneuver around the spacecraft and to hold on to it in this weightless state to keep him from floating away. He's also got these Velcro pads on his knees. And he's got these handrails additionally.
Cernan's suit pressure has run a very consistent 3.7 pounds. Stafford's suit pressure 3.6. Stafford's heart rate has been a very steady 90. Cernan's has oscillated some, running fairly close to 155 during work periods. He notes the shorter the umbilical, the more control he has. At one point, he referred to having snake all over me. This is a nickname the crew has given the umbilical. They're talking again as we pass over the Florida coast.
Cernan's heart rate at 155, just about what Dr. Berry expected. If it goes to 170 and holds at that any length of time, Berry will become concerned. The reason for high heart rate is for high heart rate, partly excitement, partly exertion. Cernan is working this hard. While Cernan's working this hard, so is Stafford. Stafford's suit is pressurized also, and it makes it very difficult for him to move while he controls the spacecraft. It is exertion against this pressurized suit, which one of the reasons the heart rates go up. Man has now, on this Cernan mission, accomplished more in space than any of the two previous spacewalks. Performed a couple of useful functions in the placing of the camera, the recovery of the micrometeoroid experiment, the placing of the docking adapter mirror. He now is testing this Velcro and handrail means for moving around the outside of the spacecraft.
We're still with you, Tom. Roger, we got that. I can use
This is Gemini Control, Houston. The crew seems to be following very closely the flight plan sketched out for you about an hour ago. Cernan is back in the area of the cockpit, and they're about ready to change the camera film. We're on the far eastern edge of the Bermuda acquisition zone, which overlaps with Antigua. And if we get some additional conversation, we'll go right back there.
We're due to lose that signal with Antigua at 11:35 Eastern Daylight Time.
Several times we heard Cernan refer to the fact that he had no torquing or roll ability on the umbilical. Of course, he does not have a handheld maneuvering gun, as did Ed White. He does note a tendency to float upwards above the spacecraft with the umbilical, which corresponds very closely to the experience of White. Let's go back now to the conversation.
This is a simulation of the next chore, which is to return to the spacecraft, stand in the seat, conduct a couple of more quick missions, changing the camera, etc., and then he emerges again for even the longer portion of this total 2.5-hour walk. Stafford monitoring his instruments, controlling the attitude of the spacecraft. He warned Cernan at one point to stay away from the thrusters of the spacecraft, which come out at about 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit at the nozzle.
Check on that primary tank pressure now. Let's bump it up.
Houston talking about the primary tank pressure. It's the pure oxygen tank, I assume that they're talking about. The tank which furnishes the life support oxygen to Cernan and Stafford while they're in the space suits.
Houston approaching LOS.
LOS is loss of signal, and that comes at Antigua, over Antigua. It should be coming just about now. At that point, there will be about 6 minutes in which there will be no communication with the spacecraft. They'll be out of the touch of the ground stations. The next ground station will be Ascension Island out in the mid-Atlantic. What you see here is in our McDonald simulator with Bob Sharp, our prime astronaut, helping Miles McClure, the McDonald suit engineer who has been simulating the part played by Cernan with some of his equipment there.
Signal with the spacecraft. Ascension will pick it up at 50 hours and 1 minute into the flight. We presently reached 49 hours, 57 minutes.
That's Paul Haney relaying to
the crew noted that they had changed the film in the EVA camera. Stafford noted at the end of that conversation that he had jettisoned the thermal curtain which protects the AMU device in the after end of the adapter. He's also illuminated the EVA lights. They are now, or in about 20 minutes, we'll be moving into a night area. The flight plan calls for Stafford to extend the handrails and the foot bar in the adapter area, which Gene will be braced against when he dons his astronaut maneuvering unit. Meanwhile, Cernan is to move to the adapter area and inspect the area generally and look at any strap hangings that might be part of the separation from their Titan booster. He didn't note any earlier. We got a very brief report there. He didn't see a lot of straps as we saw in the Gemini 6 spacecraft.
So Cernan will, in about 5 minutes from now, move out of the spacecraft again and back to the back of the spacecraft to the adapter section, where he'll stand through the night side pass around 20 minutes, putting on his astronaut maneuvering unit, and then venture forth again. CBS News color coverage of the Gemini 9 mission will continue in a moment.
Come on! Help fight that bad guy, boredom. Life can be great in an Olds 88. Terrific trio. Rich in looks. Get this 88. Delta 88. Fabulous fabrics. And a body. Beautiful. That just won't quit. And look. Dynamic 88. Style? Got the others beat by a mile. Power. Up to 365 horses. But wait, here's another goodie. Jetstar 88. Big car room. Rollicking rocket action. Yet price down low for extra savings. So, get a man-sized deal from your Olds dealer. The man who has everything for you.
This is Walter Cronkite back at our CBS News Space Center McDonnell Aircraft in St. Louis, where we've been simulating the spacewalk that Cernan is now taking. Paul Haney is having an announcement from Houston.
This is Gemini Control, Houston.
Well, we just got in on the end of that transmission from Houston. What Paul Haney had just reported was that all of the readouts on the ground at the Mission Control in Houston are very favorable on this walk of Eugene Cernan's, including his heart rate. While it went up to 155 at one point toward the end of the first part of the walk, after some 20 minutes, it had dropped down to 125, way below what they had anticipated. And they're very happy with that. As they say, the surgeons say, he is adapting very well to spacewalking. Doing very well indeed, and apparently every part of the spacewalk has gone absolutely perfectly so far. He had a little bit of difficulty perhaps attaching his 16-millimeter camera to the forward side of the hatch, which was his second mission after emerging from the hatch, or after opening the hatch. That hatch opening took place on schedule over the Pacific. By the time they were over Hawaii, some 30 minutes ago, they had the hatch open a little bit ahead of schedule, if anything, and Cernan was standing in the seat. He turned around and recovered a small box, which was a micrometeorite collection box. It had been activated during the sleep periods from inside the spacecraft for the last 2 days, and it was to measure the impact of these tiny specks, some almost invisible, of the micrometeorites that are floating in space. How many of them are there, and how dangerous are they to man in space? At this moment, they're back in touch in Ascension Island, and let's listen in.
Roger. Tom, can you see whether the tape recorder power circuit breaker is on or off on the right console?
That's probably the same circuit breaker that they had trouble with earlier in the morning before the spacewalk began, causing an uncontrolled roll. And they're just making sure from Houston that that circuit breaker is still off. They don't want another violent roll while Cernan's out there. heard a moment ago. As you heard a moment ago, they have jettisoned the cover around the astronaut maneuvering unit. That's this 166-pound backpack that Cernan will don in the back of the spaceship. That was a malfunction here at our McDonald simulation, not something that happened in space. Our hatch flew open. I repeat again, that did not happen in the space flight. It happened only here at this remarkable simulation which McDonald Aircraft has built here at St. Louis. McDonald are the people who build the Gemini spaceships and built the Mercury ship before that. At this point in the space flight itself, Cernan should be leaving the hatch again. The dark side period is just coming. They're going through their space night, which lasts about 20 minutes in the orbit that they are now in. They're entering that over Africa, and Cernan emerges from the spacecraft, goes to the back of it, back into the adapter. The adapter section of the spacecraft is that section which controls the life support systems and so forth while they're in orbit. And it is jettisoned before retrofire when they return. Right now, it's a solid ring, about 3 feet deep and some 10 feet in diameter. Back in that area, he's got a place where he stands on a footrail, holds onto a handrail, and then dons this big pack on his back, this 166-pound automatic or astronaut maneuvering unit, which will make him, in a sense, a one-man spaceship with full control capabilities. The first time this unit has ever been used, far more sophisticated than that used by Ed White on his walk. And actually, the question in space is whether, as elaborate a piece of equipment as this, it will be needed, or will a simple handheld unit, such as that Ed White used, be adequate. They won't know that until they've tested this and other units on this and the next 3 scheduled Gemini space walks. The next one of those to come up in July, on July 18th, is the present schedule. Cernan should be at this moment, although we are not getting very clear transmissions, these are scarcely readable transmissions, as you certainly know. These are still the transmissions between Cernan and Stafford that the ground is monitoring. In this case, they're monitoring at Ascension Island. And that transmission being relayed back to Cape Kennedy and to Houston and eventually to us. And it is not very readable. So far, this flight has proved out just exactly what Ed White had suggested earlier from his short walk, and so far this flight has been very much like Ed White's walk, with a few exceptions. Cernan has done more out there than White did in the first American spacewalk. He did recover that box with micrometeorite experiment. He set up the camera. He set up that mirror that you saw that will permit Stafford to watch him as he goes to the back of the spacecraft. And he tested, as did Ed White, the dynamics of the umbilical cord, what happened when he pulled on it, what happened to the spacecraft, and so forth. And now he's getting ready and is going back to the back of the spacecraft to get into that unit during the next 20 minutes and prepare for the further walk in space with his fully controlled maneuvering unit, a one-man spaceship. CBS News color coverage of the Gemini 9 mission will continue in a moment.
As
As America's Gemini heroes whirl through space, they take along equipment specially designed for the Gemini space trips. Among the gear selected was this special toothbrush made by the makers of Pico-Pay toothbrushes. This unique brush is just like the Pico-Pay brush you'd use at home, except it's made with a specially resistant material to stand up to the high temperatures and oxygen levels of space. Just as this special Pico-Pay brush goes along on Gemini flights, so this regular Pico-Pay has become the toothbrush more dentists recommend. You see, Pico-Pay was professionally designed to do the best possible job of cleaning your teeth. Every feature was designed to fight cavities. Handle, head, even the tufts are tapered deeper to clean deeper, where cavities often start. So remember, for the best possible job of cleaning your teeth, get Pico-Pay, the toothbrush recommended by more dentists.
In Houston, Paul Haney is briefing us on what they were able to pick up out of the Ascension pack.
Ensuring that the bars are in place, the foot rails and the handrails. And he will check his reaction control system handles very carefully on the AMU before moving on with the flight plan. We presently read 50 hours and 10 minutes. The crew has consistently stayed right with the flight plan as written. We expect sunset to occur in the Pretoria area at 50 hours and 16 minutes into the flight, at which point Cernan is to enter the adapter area. Our next acquisition is slated for 50 hours and 13 minutes through Pretoria, South Africa, and followed by an acquisition at Tananarive at 50 hours, 18 minutes. It is unlikely that we would have any voice communication coming back to Pretoria. I think it'll be a ground monitor only situation. This is Gemini Control, Houston.
What Paul Haney was I don't know what that transmission is unless it's a tape playback. They're not supposed to be in touch with anybody right now. That may be the end of the Ascension Island pass. As you know, these tracking stations are placed strategically around the globe to keep a constant touch with the spacecraft as is possible. But this is not possible given the present state of the radios that can be carried on these spacecraft with weight and space limitations. And with the large ocean spaces and large jungle wastes, well, there just aren't enough tracking stations and ships at sea to keep in touch with them at all times. So there are some points where signal to them is lost. One of these points is coming right now, and they will be out of touch with the Ascension Island station out in the middle of the Atlantic. From there, for about 2 minutes, to the Pretoria, South African station picks them up and carries them along for another 8 minutes. Then they're out of touch. I take that back. Pretoria and Tananarive station out in the Malagasy Republic, they overlap, and there will be constant communication with them from about 11:53 Eastern Daylight Time to 12:06. What you're hearing now is Houston contacting Pretoria and Tananarive, checking out communication before the pass.
Temperatures and pressures existent in these two suits. In Stafford's suit, pressure at last reading, which was the Cape downrange reading, shows 3.67 pounds per square inch. In the right suit, the Cernan suit, the temperature is running 54.7 degrees. the pressure 3.73 degrees. Meanwhile, the AMU hydrogen peroxide, the gas fuel, which has not yet been activated, the system still is inactive until Tom Stafford turns a switch in the cockpit. That reading shows a very steady 85, which it has run since the beginning of the flight. The peroxide temperature is 71 degrees. This is Gemini Control, Houston.
This is the first attempt to assess the value of this hydrogen peroxide in a small unit such as this astronaut maneuvering unit, and there is a constant monitoring of the pressure and temperature of that hydrogen peroxide. The substance, very much like ladies use to blondine their hair, used to at any rate. It now is being used as a jet fuel. It turns to steam and can be used to as thrusters for the spacecraft, for the astronaut maneuvering unit. And now let's go down to Nelson Benton at Mission Control Center. He can give us a report on the Cernan and Stafford families on this eventful Sunday morning. Nelson?
Walter, there's a great deal of concentration going on in Mission Control about the EVA, the extravehicular activity, and of course at the homes near Mission Control, the homes of Tom Stafford and Gene Cernan, there's a great deal of concentration. The Stafford home, Neil Armstrong's wife. Neil is the small child of astronaut Roger Chaffee out there. However, not everybody's concentrating on the flight. The last report we had from the Cernan home is that little 3-year-old Tracy is not watching, is not listening. She's in the backyard swinging. Walter?
Cernan back in the adapter of the spacecraft now as darkness settles down, settles over the spacecraft, which is on an orbit around 185 miles, just about that at which it left its target yesterday. The orbit has a 181 degree apogee, 185 degree, or perigee rather, 185 degree apogee. The target, which still has that shroud on it, which prevented the docking part of this operation, is about 145 miles back of the spacecraft now, as they're over Africa, approaching the coast of Africa. And Cernan, in the dark, is checking out with lights that are provided back in the adapter section, that adapter and the astronaut maneuvering unit. That 166-pound pack he'll be putting on his back. He sort of sits in that pack and has full maneuvering capability with it. That is, pitch, roll, yaw, forward, back, out of plane translations. That is, out of the present orbit, if he so desires. He's not going to do anything like that today, of course. This unit would provide, presumably, if it proves out, as well as they expect it to today, the capability for an astronaut to perform independently in space. The astronauts themselves would love to try that, and they just might get a chance on later Gemini missions. But until they've proved out this system on a lot more flights, they're not going to let the astronaut loose. Cernan will be at the end of a 125-foot-long nylon line, which does not have any capability to carry oxygen or communications to him, but is simply a safety cable, in effect, to keep him from floating away from the spacecraft. He backs into this AMU, as you see Miles McClure, our McDonnell suit engineer, demonstrating for us here in this remarkable simulation that McDonnell and CBS have built here in St. Louis. He will then, as he emerges from that short while, move move up on the back of the spacecraft and will then move forward. He'll get out in front of the spacecraft, and with his maneuvering unit, he will go forward and back, sideways, up and down, and finally, after 2 hours and a half in space, he will return to the spacecraft and the hatches will be closed again. At the moment, the hatch is down to within just a 2 or 3 inch opening, just enough to protect that umbilical cord on which Cernan is still connected. He will incidentally not be using that umbilical, as we suggested, when he gets out on the end of that nylon rope in another 20 or 30 minutes. We'll be standing by here at CBS News Space Center, McDonnell Aircraft, ready to report as developments warrant, and we'll be back to report the final phase of Eugene Cernan's walk in space at approximately 1:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Walter Cronkite, CBS News.
The Week in Space. CBS News selective coverage of the mission of Gemini 9. Next, a report on the conclusion of the walk in space, when CBS News coverage resumes at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. This is CBS.
The communications between Cernan and Stafford were not adequate. A loud gargle is the way Stafford called them, for them to safely let Cernan depend on that communications link alone. Also, Cernan's been having great difficulty with his visor. It's frozen up, frosted over, and he would not be able to see out there in space. Let's hear some more of the conversation.
Duty 9 away. Let's give it a no-go for the AMU. The pilot starts up completely. The AMU transmitter is garbled. I can barely read it. The attitude controller arm will not install to the proper position. And I wanted to switch back to the spacecraft elliptical umbilical.
Okay, we have that. Roger, and we concur in the no-go.
He had to expend 4 to 5 times more energy than what we added zero and 1 G what we experienced in 0 G in the airplane.
Roger, understand, and Houston agrees with the no-go.
All right, sir. All right, sir.
Stafford reporting also that it took 4 to 5 times more energy, 4 to 5 times more work for Cernan to get that AMU unit working. Listen again.
Hawaii, Capcom, Houston flight. Go flight. Roger, if you get a chance, you could ask him to turn around and see if he can get some sunlight into the adapter area.
He said that he was attempting to get the sunlight on him now.
Okay, fine.
With the sunlight on him, they...
Roger, we understand.
With the sunlight on him, they might be able to warm up and...
Okay, he's back on
the freezing and the fogging of the visor. That probably will happen. But all of these other malfunctions with the AMU mean that, as you heard, Stafford had recommended and the ground had accepted the recommendation that they abandon that AMU experiment. What hasn't been entirely clear to us here on the ground is whether the visor that is fogged is the primary visor, the same sort that all the astronauts wear, or
this is Gemini Control, Houston, 51 hours, 8 minutes into the flight. At last report, Cernan said that he still had approximately 75% fogging condition on his visor. And while the situation is still in some doubt, it does not appear that the AMU will be used during the mission. They're going to have another reevaluation as we move into the California area of acquisition. We are acquiring now at California, and let's stand by.
Well, apparently there is some reconsideration in Houston. Some reevaluation the last 5 minutes. At 12:44 Eastern Daylight Time, they said no go for the AMU. Now they're reconsidering.
Hawaii is LOS. Roger, Hawaii.
They
We lose contact now with the...
Sorry about that AMU. Yep, not bad. Suppose you talked over you. Maybe take a sonar. I'd hang around again if I could have seen. That'll let us know when you just get outside, Gene. Okay, Houston, the smoke's up pretty high overhead and Gene is still fogged over. Not even...
Roger, we're reading you loud and clear now, Tom.
Okay. Maybe we call it quits on AMU, but we had no choice.
Roger, we concur.
We're getting these constant concurrences from Houston for a no-go for the astronaut maneuvering unit, but Paul Haney still says they're considering the matter, and it does not appear they're going to conduct the AMU experiment.
So far, about 50% fogged over. Roger, Houston, can you get this? I got it.
Apparently that fogging is disappearing now. They're down to 50% fog.
Think you're going to fog when you take it to the best ones that you do, we'll back it off. I'm at Sky, we got to go to nighttime. Oh, we got a little particle. Okay, I'm on icon and staying fogged right now.
By a Colesman orbital map there, you see where they are.
You might have Gene check his emergency bottle pressure when he gets a chance.
Roger, we will. We're trying to... He's on high rate deal, and he is still fogging.
Roger, when he can see well enough to read that bottle pressure, we'd like to get an idea what it is.
Well, Roger, we'll do. Pete, can you read your emergency multiple pressure on the chip? Yeah, it's about 6,800. Houston, did you copy 6,800?
Roger, very good.
Hey, like there's an airplane in the contrails down there. Can you see out there? I can see right through my nose, but I can't see in front of my eyeballs. We're coming up to LA. I've got the Falls Tree and Indio and down there with the mountains around it. I've got Palos Verdes down there and San Clemente Island.
Yeah, that's some kind of a first, Tom.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, what's that guy doing with the Texas Texas license out there on the California highway? Which one is that? Which freeway? The Golden? Yeah, that motorcycle. Oh, the Golden State Freeway. Yeah.
Apparently they're not...
Okay, Gene, how much can you see out now? Okay, I got my left eye, I can see through, and I can see through my nose, the whole right side, and the extreme left side are still fogged. Okay, Houston, he can just see through his nose and one little hole in his left eye. And I can see in the mirror, he's pretty well fogged over to about 60-70% of his sight.
Roger, Tom, and we're copying Gene pretty good, too.
Okay.
This fogging means that Rex Cernan's wearing a shutter out there. You can see very little around it.
A little rest down. Not really passing right over also, Joe.
Presumably what they're going to do is wait for the heat of the daytime pass over the United States to try to dissipate that fog.
Control, Houston. We want to confirm that the AMU decision made by Stafford was no go. We've canceled the AMU experiment. Cernan is back on the spacecraft, electrical power and oxygen. And at the present time, he's taking a little rest as the spacecraft moves across the New Mexico area.
The attempt to connect up with the totally independent astronaut maneuvering unit, the AMU.
An amazing visual definition that he could see through a little spot where his nose was, but he could not see through where his eyes are. But apparently, as to demonstrate that his vision wasn't completely obscured, he asked why that motorcycle or car down there on a California freeway had a Texas license plate, injecting some levity into the situation, which I suppose is needed at this point. We're showing 51 hours, 14 minutes into the flight here, and we expect the Texas station to acquire momentarily.
Cernan is, in effect,
as if you were sitting in your automobile, and the windshield and the windows were all fogged up with a little bit of crack down about where the radiator cover is. This is about what he can see out through his visor.
I'd like to tell everyone down there that's concerned, I'm so sorry about this.
Houston, Tom, tell them we're not concerned a bit.
Stafford apologizing for the fact there.
While I'm standing here, I might place you. The bathtub did hang up, by the way. One arm rail was deployed, the foot rail was deployed. The foot arm rail and with the umbilical cord was deployed. They were hung up with the bathtub. I was able to get back there without any problem. I saw it was just hanging loose. And I spun the bathtub loose. The arm rail came out, the umbilical cord came out, so I was spun away. I had the starboard EVA light back there, and I had one pen light. I think one of the problems was that just before sunset, up at my back must have got well over 100 degrees because it was really hot. And right after it got cool, my visor started up, and I could just look at the thing with the fog visor, but I just couldn't see enough of what I was trying to get at, and then the visor fogged completely over.
Tom, we copy.
And I'm still I guess about 40% fog right now in high flow.
That's Cernan speaking, of course.
It's just about clear here. It's pretty high.
There's Stafford's voice again.
Okay, Roger, Houston, ready to beat this game here now. Pressure game's still fog. It's around 4. Okay, one thing. How about getting the docking mirror out? It's really bad at first. You want that out of there? Yeah, we want it out of there. Okay, I'll go up and get it.
Texas Road, California local.
Texas Remote.
Temperature goes down about to minus 250 degrees.
Mr. Cernan's moving up now on the forward end of the spacecraft to retrieve the rear view mirror, which he mounted on the docking bar at the earlier in his extravehicular activity. We have no firm estimate yet on just when Gene will return to the spacecraft. We would expect it to come perhaps 5 to 10 minutes now. The flight plan showed that he could remain out up to 5 hours and 50 minutes. He may elect to take the full time. It's just not known at this point. His fogging is now reduced to about 40%. Let's go back for additional conversation.
Cernan is back in the forward part, or working his way toward the forward part of the spacecraft now, having spent the night side pass back in the adapter section and finding that this astronaut maneuvering unit was not functioning properly so that he could use it in space. Another disappointment for the flight of Gemini 9. This $1 million unit